All right. Do you want to hit record?
Oops.
And I need to finish that. Are we recording? Or not yet? That Grant.
Can't do it. Are we close?
I feel like, yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Otherwise, I was just gonna like spend a couple hours and write it and call it a day.
I have it here too, if you want.
Well,
I can forward this to you if you'd like.
well, no, I'm trying to pull it down off our website. Am I kicking it off?
Oh, I just was waiting to make sure the Zoom was being recorded.
Recording in progress.
All right. Microphone's on. This is the Village of Cottage Grove Library Board Facility Subcommittee meeting on Wednesday, April 17th at 6 p.m. It is a hybrid meeting in Village Hall and on Zoom. It is 6:02, so I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and the agenda was properly posted online. This is a public opportunity to speak. There are no members of the public present. So we will move on to discuss and consider the meeting minutes from the February 21st Library Board Facilities Subcommittee meeting. They are linked in your agenda.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
There is a motion and a second. Motion by Eric and second by Lucas. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. So new business, maybe a little bit of actually like old business. So we can discuss just library facilities and operations strategic planning. So there are two items linked in your agenda. So one are the notes from the last time we met in February when we went through kind of that exercise, the SWOT exercise. And then the second item 5B is what Stefan put together from our last library board meeting, which was in March, where we did kind of the same exercise. And then Stefan compiled kind of both, kind of the outcomes from both, and kind of identified some major themes. And I don't know, Stefan, do you want to maybe run through that document in a little bit more detail?
So first, I'm sorry I had missed the previous subcommittee meeting. I thought you guys did an excellent job in putting together, completing the SWOT analysis. What I found interesting, and this is kind of how we framed, there was a difference in perspective and how we presented the activity between the subcommittee and the library board. So the subcommittee, of course, looked at physical space and the opportunities around that, and the library board looked at it as a more broad aspect. What was really interesting in that is that the overlaps were the same. So I was really pleased to see one of the most obvious things we agree on is the quality of the library programming, the volunteers, and Tracy's time as being the coordinator of those program activities. So I think that was a really good finding. What I put together in the themes document, the second item listed in the agenda under this agenda item, is some of the themes around strengths. So I just spoke a little bit to library programming, and that's a really large strength overall. So I think that's gotten a lot more attention in our community about the benefits of library programming within our community, and not something that we rely on other communities to provide for our citizens to go from here, from the village and the town into Madison, Sun Prairie, Monona for services. In addition, I think the library programming also has demonstrated that it provides a variety of services that are different than what we might see from Sun Prairie, Monona, McFarland, Madison. So I think that the energy around programming has really propelled us into that next question, which is, we know we can't afford to build a physical library in our community in the near term, but what can we do for physical space to help continue to support those programs and the volunteers and others who are interested in that. So our other strengths, the themes around that, were staffing and volunteers, which I've briefly spoken to, and then our ability to get grant funding. So the time and attention it takes to get to submit the grant and process the grant. Then there's always the follow-up to the grant to demonstrate we've done what we said we were going to do. So it's just not getting the money, but it's actually showing the effectiveness of using that money towards the goals that was intended to. So we've been successful in acquiring additional funds. If we weren't able to acquire those funds, we wouldn't be able to have the library programming that we do today. So that's a strength. And then I thought it was important to call it out separate from staffing and volunteering, which is the partnerships. So I think Tracy has done a great job of partnering with library directors from our neighboring communities to be able to augment programming here in the village, our relationship with the Bookmobile program, as well as the Friends of the Library, our Chamber of Commerce, and other groups that have seen the benefits of having a strong library program in our community. So those are the strengths. Communications and marketing. I'm sorry, I didn't scroll far enough. And some of these, of course, lead into those additional opportunities in the future. But I think our communication and marketing strategies demonstrate success based on the attendance at our various programming events. So I think that came out through the SWOT analysis very nicely as well. Anything that you feel that kind of I missed in evaluating at least the SWOT analysis between the subcommittee here and the board when it comes to our strengths that we should further document?
I don't think so.
Okay. So let's move to the next section, which is really about the risks that impact sustainability of the library programming and the future of our library within Cottage Grove. So there's 3 areas. One is physical space. Second is budget funding, and of course, staffing. So physical space, this is a risk when we are relying on community businesses to provide free space, or sometimes space where people who come into that space may be obligated to purchase things. So having physical space for programming, or not having space for physical programming, may be a limitation to future programming opportunities for us. It may limit future volunteer and partnerships with others if we don't have a space for people to come to. And ultimately, we could lose community support by not having a physical space that we can demonstrate the presence of the library and library programming within our community. So the next risk is about budget and funding. So relying on grants can only take us so far. We do appreciate the funding that we have received from the village board, the village trustees. However, it's minimal in being able to sustain staffing and materials and the funding it takes to bring in library experts or program participants. So you can only have so many people working for free to do the presentations, but as we've seen with things like the DJ that we had, who year 2, his prices increased significantly, other things that require funding, that if we don't increase the funding that the library board receives for these programs, that we may not be able to sustain the programs going forward. In addition, if we don't help augment some of the staffing opportunities, I'll use in air quotes, is that when we have part-time staff and volunteer staff who are supporting the program, that sustainability is a risk, in that when people transition in and out, you're losing energy, you're losing continuity, you're changing things up in a manner where the community cannot depend on the quality of the services provided. So when it comes to staffing, if we lost staffing or the people who have been volunteering, so if we lost Tracy, that would be a potentially very negative hit to the effectiveness that she's had in providing, what are we at, 100 programs a year?
That's what we're on track for this year, yeah.
Right. So if we have a gap in that, if something happens to Tracy and we rely on volunteers, we will not be able to sustain that level of programming, and many in our community would be impacted by not having some of those programs that have been provided for the last year.
I guess that was a question I was going to have, or is just to clarify, when it says the loss of current staffing, that's sort of what you were just speaking to, sort of the more of like a theoretical loss, like what happened if Tracy,
Correct,
stepped out of that position.
And it could also be, things happen in family life that reduces the time you can commit to a part-time job or even a full-time job. So, life events can impact the quality of services based on hours of availability, attention detail, those sorts of things. And I think we hit a home run with getting Tracy as our library program coordinator, but to replace that would be very, very difficult, especially at the current salary rate.
Yep.
I think the other thing within that staffing context, besides salary, is that it's how that staff is integrated with other village staff and other village programming. So we've been working, I had sent a message to Matt about how do we get Tracy into the village staff meetings and those sorts of things. He seemed very welcoming of that idea and encouraging of that. But we need that staff person to be treated as a full member of the village team, administrative team. And by doing that, there'll be clearer lines of communication. There'll be opportunities to identify improving workflows so there's less work. So where are we being redundant in our workflows or relying on checkpoints in process? So having her be part of that process at the staff level is ideal. I'm glad that Matt was in agreement that she's a welcome member to those is it monthly or weekly staff meetings? So yeah, it's whenever they happen, right?
I just in terms of staffing, just knowing that she is far below market rate for a library,
Yep.
very far below. And she has a limited number of hours because our budget was like all inclusive for like operational costs and her salary. And so in order to provide the level, to meet the level of service that we did last year, she's at 20 hours a week, and, but that's for everything. So when we want to like start integrating into other types of meetings or take over some other types of responsibilities that the board has been, our board has been doing.
That eats away at the 20 hours.
Right, which then cuts into programming, which is
Yeah.
the output of like her position. And so perhaps an opportunity is just to kind of rework that position for the next fiscal year. I think one of the risks that we had identified was that we don't have a library director, and I've taken on much of that responsibility, and that is just obviously not sustainable. And moving forward, you're not going to find any other volunteer that is going to take on the level of.
And there's a huge risk for just losing all the institutional knowledge here.
Yep.
This
Right.
with 20 hours a week, with only one paid position, 20 hours a week, and all the benefits like the partnerships and stuff could easily be lost just basically overnight
Right.
with this.
And I would be hesitant to expect anyone on the village administrative staff to take on the workload on top of their existing job duties. You want to do another 20 hours of work a week, right? Yeah, I know. So it's things like that where, you know, they don't have a what in the consulting world we'd call a bench, right? We don't have a bench behind Tracy or behind the other village staff to augment each other when there is a gap of staffing.
So other things, something I just thought of, like in terms of physical space, like I think, you know, you did a nice job of highlighting, like we use lots of different locations, but not having like that centralized location, but really just that we are missing so much of, we don't have a collection, we don't have the other spaces that libraries offer, and it's not just about programming, it's not just about books, it's about inclusive free space to think and interact with your neighbors and do all, I mean, preaching to the choir, do all the things that you do in a library. And so kind of emphasizing that space for the other needs of the library is missing and is needed.
Monday, I just realized that Monday is a no school day.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Right, so luckily I have teenagers now and they're kind of self-sufficient, but it'd still be nice to say, okay, meet your friends at this physical space and game
After
or
school
whatever.
space,
Yeah,
teen-
after
but
school
it's like,
space.
teen space, senior space,
Yep.
family space, all of that we just, don't have.
Right.
And then another thing that I thought of was just like the access to, we are missing access to resources from Dane County, from South Central, interlibrary loan. Like we don't, aside from the bookmobile, but for 5 hours a week, we don't have that. And I think physical space, adequate funding, like can start bringing some of that in as well. We can be members of South Central without having, a physical, like the library. But there are small incremental steps that we can start taking by becoming members of that, and that opens up doors to other resources that we're missing here.
Yeah.
The fact that how many times have we now had the bookmobile not be available to us because of mechanical or?
This is week 5 of
Yeah,
this one. It was
thank you.
14 weeks 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Which any other service, if your Public Works was out of commission and not plowing streets for
Like a
14
third of the
weeks,
time,
like
yeah.
there would be an uproar.
Right.
So
And as far as we know, there is an uproar about the bookmobile. It's just that there's not an outlet for that, where there's no one to call saying, why isn't the bookmobile here? Well, I mean, there's a bookmobile service number to call, but there's not anyone here at the village hall to take phone calls about why isn't the bookmobile where it's supposed to be.
And you have to
We've
check
relied
Facebook
on
to
now
know.
notification through Facebook, but how many people does that really
you
go
can
to?
get on the email list for the bookmobile.
Yes, that's true.
Ah,
Did
So
not know
they
that.
added me to that.
Oh, you did get added.
I did,
Nice.
last,
Cool.
or 2 years ago, yeah.
Should I move on to the opportunities to consider for?
Yeah.
So I identified four opportunities to consider for our goals, for the library board goals, moving forward this year. Versus physical space, so we need to investigate the costs and needs of short-term physical space. Short-term in this arena is 10 years, so,
Okay.
right? So, you know, take the word short-term with a grain of salt, but we do need some sort of space. And the benefits that come along with that space, such as the funding from South Central and some of those services will help augment our costs, I believe. Library board coordination, so we would like, this goes to the previous comments I was making about staffing, is to formalize the Cottage Grove Library as an official department of the village. So that then it's seen on the same level as the other services that are offered or other departments provided by the village. And that doesn't mean we need to move immediately to full-time staffing or other things, but I think that will help augment some of the conversations that need to be happening in those rooms to ensure that we have funding and staffing for our programs and hopefully some type of physical space.
And I think maybe that's also like maybe the reorganization of like job title and
Yes,
duties.
definitely. The Centennial Showcase, so that came up, and I'm not familiar with the Centennial Showcase, but it's an opportunity that we could pull together as part of the village to demonstrate how we are a positive service. I don't know if Cindy, if you want to.
So yeah, I know
Yeah.
about it.
What is
Yes,
the
gonna
Centennial
happen.
Showcase?
Oh, well, that's gonna be, and,
Do
and
tell.
Kelly knows all about it because we met this morning, in October, but also like throughout the year. And so Tracy and I, well, we meet every Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month, and go through things, and we're planning for fall already. And so the story walk will most likely be the Centennial Showcase, well, for the library, like photos most likely, and working with, we'll figure it out.
Cool.
But amongst other very fun celebration
Nice.
events.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. And then the final part is marketing communications, and you'll find this in any, probably if you do any type of SWOT analysis and strategic planning, it'll be on every list every time.
Yeah.
But we do heavily rely on the Meta platform, Facebook, Instagram, for promoting what's going on. Are there other places where we should be promoting the library programming and our strategy and other things? So we have the village website, of course. So that is websites I look at is someone has to go out and find it. So there's an effort there. Social media is at least a way for it to get in front of someone based on their algorithms, but now you're relying on search engine optimization and other factors when it comes to those platforms. Are there other ways that we could be promoting the library? I'm appreciative that we're part of the Chamber of Commerce, and they always give us a minute or two to talk about, you know, what events are coming up and promote through that. But are there other opportunities to be promoting our services through the schools or through other summer programming, through local businesses with customers? So are there opportunities to promote through that, either other social media platforms or other methodology? So probably the only thing that I'm recalling aged conversations about mailing lists, but I don't like to avoid doing mailings.
We have our newsletter
Yep,
is new this year.
yep.
But also I think it's not just like program opportunities, but like education about services and other things. What about fundraising? as a, like an opportunity.
Okay, I missed that, didn't I?
Well, I had a meeting with the Friends exec team last week, and they just want to know, I think the idea is that they're, like, the programs that the Friends are doing this year, obviously they started programming. The village took it over, because it's a public service. They've continued to do their kind of key events this year, but now it's, again, volunteers is not a sustainable, just
Right.
not sustainable. And so, can the library board and programming take over Earth Day and Zoo to You, basically those two big ones? But then can they start to pivot to fundraising for literacy materials? But we execute the events, they provide, some of the, the materials for it. Are there other opportunities then to do like a bigger fundraiser that libraries normally do? It obviously gets people excited and, more interested in the project in and of itself. And so is that not necessarily, like, I don't think we call anything a capital campaign, because until you have a year and a commitment, a capital campaign is just not in the cards. Like that, you're not necessarily going to get people who are going to then donate, and you're not going to put the time and effort into taking pledges and holding that money and investing it, and then to find out that in 10 years the board turns over and is not going, it removes it from the plan again, and then people want their money back, which is everything that happened before. And so until there's an actual commitment, running a formal capital campaign is just not responsible. But fundraising for the things that are happening and that might include also physical space and furnishings and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I would say we should add that to the list of finding.
Fundraising.
But I think we need, to your point, we need to be specific that it's fundraising for physical space, short-term physical space, and library programming. And we've gotten some donations, right, for that in the past.
Yeah, and we've had foundation donations, and which have, most of our story time is all foundation donation.
Nice.
So I guess there's kind of maybe also not only like grant writing that can disappear, but other sources of funding that can not happen next year. And so I also wonder if an opportunity is really kind of to revise the funding ask for budget season. Should be a goal. Complemented by fundraising, but I think a full, formal, well thought out budget.
You don't want to have programs that are well loved just disappear overnight because we didn't receive the
Right.
funding from
Or other programs that disappear and other offerings that are maybe more like a specific niche, or like offerings to certain demographics are going to disappear because a larger demographic has a need.
Correct, yeah.
And then Stefan, I guess my final question for you is, how do we integrate our core values into kind of like this document? Or do you think that we did a good job of that? I just brought them up because
I think that's probably something I could go back and plug into the document of how
we
we're
can obviously
addressing
put this all
that.
in like one, we'll put
Yeah.
it all in one document so it's there, but I just, the opportunities which, when we start setting maybe more specific goals, right? When
Yep.
we identify these opportunities, like, are we then thinking about our core values, and are they aligning, and are they meeting them?
Yeah, I think measuring the core values based on the our strengths, opportunities, and our goals for the next year. I think by putting those within the context of those three areas would help a reader see what the value is. So there's a lot of words in that first one on library programming, right? I could have written probably a 4-page paper
Right.
on what we're doing. So that's very general, but would you look at that? I think 3 of the core values should be represented in that we're being physically responsible, the DEI part, and that we're addressing different constituencies of the community.
So moving forward with this document too, or moving forward with identifying some goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we want to?
Are there, so I think that then probably for this group, based on the goals that are there, then the additional one of funding, what are some specific tasks that either this subcommittee or the village board the library board should be considering in getting those things done? So, assigning responsibility, for example, for getting costs for space rental and those sorts of things.
So really, this committee should be looking at physical space
Right.
goals as well as revision of the budgets,
Yep.
that portion of the budgets, and then maybe also that portion of fundraising.
Yep.
Seems reasonable, yeah.
Do we want to just brainstorm a little bit under those, kind of like? Physical space. How do you go about finding a library?
How do you go?
Oh gosh, my 15 years, I didn't think I would ever be asked that question.
So can we start with the cart on the corner next to the tomato corn stand? I mean,
Start smaller.
So I think like first, we should identify space needs, minimum space needs, right? And what you would use that space for.
And just to clarify from the last meeting, the bookmobile, like we could not get books dropped off in a physical space, or is that unclear?
So interlibrary loan, I don't think we would qualify.
Qualified,
for-
okay.
Because we don't have,
Even if we were members of SCLC.
maybe that's a goal. And my notes are, half the time I can't even read my handwriting. So I had met with the 2 Tracys, one from Dane County and one from South Central. And we had talked about, gosh, this stuff is from a million years old. Okay. We had met in January about space and interim plans, and really it was, focusing on the there and identifying a library space and like what that would look like here. A dedicated space gives you kind of everything, like everyone can have community then. A storefront, basically we're looking for an anchored space that's not mobile. So that we're not jumping around with programming, and so that and we can call it a library. We can have membership in SCLS, but probably interlibrary loan, we would not be eligible for that.
Okay.
We can think about having our own collection, and we can do whatever we want with that collection because it won't be a standard collection.
Yeah.
But then you also have to think about how are you checking items that, like, I mean, that is a huge
There's
cost.
an infrastructure that goes along with the just maintenance of it. Yeah.
I mean, I
And
guess
we
we could
wouldn't
model
have
it
our own-
after,
Our own, library software, we'd have to fund that ourselves.
yes.
Oh,
Go back to
And
the
we would not be eligible.
library cards with the stamps to check out.
I have to, yeah,
Pa-
invest in some
paper-based.
card stock. And some stamps where you like roll the dates.
I'm not
Oh my
too.
gosh.
I'm not too young to remember.
Bring back
Oh.
the Dewey Decimal System.
Yes, we could. We could call it the Dewey Decimal Cottage Grove
We can
Library.
call it whatever we want.
Yes, we can call it, and we can still call it a library.
Yeah,
It can still
right.
function as a library, but we will not be eligible for Dane County reimbursements.
Mhm.
Right.
If we do not meet the standards. And, you know, we talked about how the standards are changing, and there's going to be, you know, a little bit more flexibility with the municipalities. And like, especially because like, some of those standards with technology, like, you don't have computer labs anymore.
right.
Yeah.
You don't have, like, all of that is changing, and so they anticipate that change, a revision in 2025,
Okay.
which should make things easier.
Okay.
So.
But we will not meet that.
Right,
With
Right.
any
No.
storefront in Cottage
No.
Grove, we will not meet that.
right.
So their suggestion was really to like take a look at empty buildings, contact owners, see if they're, you know, willing to rent for $1, or, you know, it's a tax write-off for them. I have contacted a realtor, and met with her and kind of just like to discuss the whole thing. She's a local realtor here. She works with she's pretty well integrated in the community. She's been here for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can bring her to maybe our next meeting too, and kind of get her perspective on maybe what we're looking for and how to go about doing that. I think, I mean, there are storefronts that are open, but what happens when you put a library in and you furnish it, and then it's like, oh, you have a lease for a year, and then you move again.
Right. Yeah. Like.
I think that's gonna be tough.
Maybe that means the focus should really be on programming to begin with, and we kind of move away from, this hurts me. We move away from the idea, I mean, of a collection at the moment.
I think a collection would be, can you imagine a collection with a 20-hour a week
Yeah, it would be.
programmer?
I don't
Right.
see. I don't see how that's. I don't see that how
Yeah.
that's gonna happen.
And
Yeah.
library management systems are either expensive or they're open source and require extensive IT knowledge. So like none of them are really free in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
You either have to have expertise on staff or you're paying someone to handle it. And those are thousands of dollars, even what we use at the school. Each school system is $1,000 a year. Each school pays $1,000 for Destiny, which is a really bad library management system, just really horrible.
You don't like Destiny?
No, just really
Oh.
horrible.
Yeah, so if we had a collection, we would own our collection, but we would not share our collection with anyone, and we wouldn't get, so it's not like Sun Prairie, we could swap things out and like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
But then we'd have the problem of everything getting returned to Penny.
Oh my God.
Or
And
else
we
we
can't-
Have a
and we can't
sticker on
get
the
it sent
front,
back
do
to
not
us.
go
Easy way
Penny.
to annoy the people at Penny.
we would also then, I mean, that works both ways. We would just start getting Penny stuff and Sun Prairie stuff and
That's
Rio
true.
stuff.
And then we can't ship it.
And then
we
we
No,
What
we
all
have
this
to
stuff?
drive,
We'd
the
have to
library
drive
board
it.
would be responsible for driving it
Yeah,
around.
Just-
load it up in the
Disaster,
Subaru,
yes.
let's go.
So we could get
Point.
support from South Central for ordering things. I thought, and I don't have this written down, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think it might give us access though to like Overdrive and some of the online
And
materials.
Oh, that would be cool.
That was where I was thinking of going, is the more
And
digital
I wonder if
route.
it's like, okay, we have internet, we have a digital collection,
Yeah.
or access to digital collection and digital materials. You have internet in that space, you have
Yeah.
tables and meeting space, but it's, again, like a focus more on programming.
Right.
Interesting idea.
Yeah.
I think a collection in the next
Physical.
2 years is,
No,
It's a non-starter.
yeah. Do
as
you-
much as I want one.
Do
not
you
to
have
say.
the cost of what it would take to become members of South Central?
So it depends on like what package you build. I can get some numbers though.
Yeah,
That would
just
be
out of
great.
curiosity, like
So-
cost benefit.
Bare
Curious.
bones package.
So how much in
Yeah.
service? What is the cheapest? Yes.
We could be part of South Central,
What's the bargain package, please?
Yeah.
but not part
And
of
can we have a
interlibrary loan.
discount for being sad?
50% discount.
So Eric has a question.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you,
Sorry.
Stephen.
Sorry.
We could be part of South Central, but not part of their interlibrary loan.
Yes.
Which is, brings up another idea, thought, like, how do we check out materials? Would we have our own library card? Would we? I'd
I
hate to
think-
think of charging people for library cards. I know some states do that, or
Mhm.
allow for libraries to do that.
I think without like a collection and like without being like the software and I just don't think it's it's realistic to have.
Without full-time staff, and you would need.
Right, I'm just even thinking with online though, like how would anyone just theoretically be able to use it? Or do we want to have some sort of membership to say, hey, look at all these people signed up for our library and we don't have a library?
I would assume maybe the bookmobile cards would then work for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have, your library card is tied
Right.
to your municipality because that's how they track where you get things and
Mhm.
where the money goes. And so, and we
Thanks,
know
by the
that
way.
like we've quadrupled the number of library card holders in the last 3 years
Wow.
in Cottage Grove.
And if we had Overdrive, that would grow, because I love Overdrive, and everyone who has
Mhm.
it loves it. It's
Mhm,
great,
mhm.
especially
Okay.
if you have a Kindle.
Yeah. Membership, let me look into membership dues at what a basic level looks like and
Okay.
what that gets us, and then what kind of services we could have minus collection services.
For the schools out here, does someone from Monona come out to talk about like the summer library program, or
Bookmobile does.
the
for
Bookmobile does?
Cottage
Okay.
Grove, yeah,
Do you know if they're still using Beanstalk this year?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's free from the state.
Oh,
It is, we had looked into that last year and having a Cottage Grove account, and it was 10,000, it was expensive.
Wow.
Wait, you don't get it for free?
No, because we don't have a library.
Oh, see, they offer it to the schools for free.
No, I know they would give it to the schools, they would get, and, it wasn't that, okay, it might have been like, it was 2,500-ish.
It is expensive though, when.
Which is,
Yeah.
we were gonna run like a summer reading, this was back when, like, I think Dave Peterson was like going to personally fund this. Like, and we were gonna do summer reading program, and this was at the very beginning of all of everything.
Mhm.
And it was just like, the amount of time, and then the fact that you'd be competing with other,
Mhm.
like the Bookmobile program in Monona, which was giving prizes and everything too. Like, it
Mhm.
was just like, it was just too overwhelming last year. But like, that opens up the door for, I mean, maybe that is something that happens when you have a space and like a staffed space, and
Right.
summer reading becomes a lot easier when you're not floating around to 22 different places.
And
Yeah.
people know the central location to go to. 'Cause
Right.
That makes things a lot easier.
Okay, I will meet with South Central and get numbers. And I can, reach back out to the realtor.
I like the idea of inviting her to come to a meeting,
Okay.
just because
So we
I don't know
needed-
about anybody else, but I could use to be educated on that topic, you know?
Okay.
I don't know much, so,
And I know very little about Cottage Grove real estate.
yeah.
And then I guess the other thing we need to think about though is minimum space requirements. And maybe we can talk to Tracy about what she thinks her space for programming would need.
Mhm. Is there a way that we could use the master planning that we put together and the square footage and like carve it up into the pieces that we feel would be,
But like,
like,
right here.
we need these 3
Yeah.
parts, and that's, 2,000 square feet or whatever. Like, we might be able to use that for something, at least to estimate space needs and size and that sort of stuff.
About a year ago, sorry to
So
talk.
it's not completely lost. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I put together a presentation because a bunch of us went to different libraries in Dane County, especially small ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we've asked, that was one of the questions we asked them, how many square feet do you have, or how much square footage do you have in your library? So that might give a,
Eric's report.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I still have that, because it was digital.
Yeah, especially if you went to small ones.
It's
like
on,
me.
it's on online too, so.
Oh, excellent.
So the realtor could come in, we meet in June. And then we could have like, we would know like what our minimum, we like did some brainstorming and look at all these documents. And then like, does that exist in a location in Cottage Grove?
Mm-hmm.
There's a magazine available on the what's the name of the website, you guys? I'm there, but change Overdrive. The Air Fryer Cookbook.
Hey, sweet.
It's awesome.
Buy stuff from
You get
Costco
everything
and throw
on
it
there.
in an air fryer.
Yeah.
I think we should also loop the friends into the conversation about what the space is used for, because that gets us also into the fundraising, funding portion of it,
Yep.
the 3 Fs. Fundraising,
Friends.
funding, budget,
Oh.
and friends. I love F words.
I'm sure the
None
friends.
of those are my favorite.
The friends will be happy to stop storing everything in their basements, like between us, like,
Mhm.
constantly texting back and forth to see who has what. So
Right.
yeah.
And I'm sure Tracy would love to not store.
Her husband would enjoy not having
I'm
half of
sure.
his office be Village of Cottage Grove things.
Yeah,
I have a closet in my basement too. It's full of like.
it's funny.
You could develop a virtual space, though.
Yeah.
That he could. That would get people excited, actually, because he does like design, like virtual like rooms and stuff, like on computer, computer stuff. So, okay. So physical space. Oh, and then. So how are we defining short-term physical space? I know you said 10 years.
But isn't it 10 years before we talk about it?
Well, it's not in the 10-year financial management plan.
So then we're looking at like 15 to 20, right?
Yes, yeah.
I know.
Do we even have a right to call it short term?
That's
mean,
yeah, I mean,
sincerely. Like,
Near term.
Yeah.
that's why I keep saying, like, depending on the decade we build it in.
Oh.
Yeah, and I do agree, short term is maybe the wrong word, so, near term or,
We can do it before the next eclipse, which is
Yeah.
21 years.
So I think that's a good point. So I think what we'd want to say is we want physical space for sustainability at least for the next 5 years, and then reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Because that gives us time to get in, demonstrate usage, and then identify future needs. So if we need to grow whatever space we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I
think five-
that's a marketing aspect is what do we call it, maybe?
An
So
F word.
maybe a starter space, like
Starter
focused
Starter
on
space.
programming, and then
Yeah.
as things grow and people use it, then
That's not a bad way to look
and
at it.
staffing, because that would be the big
Well-
thing. We can't do a lot more until staffing grows.
Right, and knowing the village's financial realities and projects that are ongoing right now, and budget levy,
Yep.
all of that.
Mhm.
Like 5 years at like a starter is probably more tolerable than like being like, we need, like, staffing is a huge ask.
Mm.
Yeah.
I would not want to sign a lease for more than 5 years And I think even at that, that would be one
You
that
can
would,
always break a lease for
It's-
easier than
yeah.
getting kicked out.
But then, of course, after 5 years, they can then kick it up.
Right.
So that's the other thing, so.
Maybe the library board then, like, you know, when it comes to like formalizing staffing needs, then if we're like thinking of, if we're coming up with like basically a 5-year plan, maybe the library board thinks of a 5-year plan in terms of increasing the staffing needs to accommodate this space too then,
Yeah.
Right.
would make sense. And that's kind of like that, your second opportunity there, Stefan.
Mhm.
Like, become a formal department and kind of reorganize Tracy's role and probably increase that role for next year. And then what is, the library board can discuss what goals they would have to move her position to maybe 40 hours a week. And if we moved it to 32 next year, would it go to 40 in year 2? And then when does a second part-time of staff person come on?
Just
Wow.
incremental.
And I think so maybe the library board focuses on that. Centennial Library Board, we got that this year.
Nice.
Going back to the space question, what we call it, and maybe instead of calling it a library, we call it library programming space or something to that effect. Because
You mean like
I think in
internally?
reality, it's going to be more of a meeting space, a activity space than anything that's, I think we already made the decision we can't do collections.
At what point does that become very confusing when we have,
Cottage Grove Library,
and
and
then
it's
it has,
like
it's an empty room.
some
with
couches.
devices. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's only open when we have story times or other programs.
right.
I mean, it's a good point. Like, you don't want to, yeah.
You know, what do we, and maybe the
People are
Friends-
already confused by seeing the sign and thinking that there's a library there. So, you know, yeah.
Someone thought Granite Ridge, someone I was talking to the other day, thought Granite Ridge was the library. It's like the big,
Oh.
beautiful
Could you
library.
imagine?
I'm like, oh, you know, I wish.
Yeah,
It is a nice library.
Not huge of a
the whole,
library.
that would be like, it has, a library has a gym.
Yeah.
Office space.
A
Our head
principal.
custodian did say if we propose putting a gym in the library, building a library with a gym, that it would get a huge basketball courts. It would get,
Sure.
We
Yeah.
would sell, we would book that,
No,
no
doubt,
problem.
Yeah.
yeah,
Was that Nick?
yeah.
Oh.
Nick said
Oh,
that. It's like it would get, it'd be booked all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Easy.
Does communications have anything to do with this facilities subcommittee and like the goals that we have?
Well, I think we just hit on it, is what, I think it's the marketing and communications of what is it that we, because I think in this, it's the first, we need to really be effective in how we communicate with the village board for funding or for potential donors for space for, to achieve getting space and having the funding for it. And then, of course, communicating with the community on what the purpose of that space is. So
Yeah.
it's not a true library.
right.
I mean, I think we just have to rip the Band-Aid off and say that
It's
this
not.
is space to support library programming. It's a space for, when we can staff it, for supporting people who need to have meetings or study groups or after-school, day-off type activities or events.
And maybe in the future, it could resemble something that's more accustomed to a library when there's more staffing, more funding, and, yeah,
It's a step to a library.
right.
So
And
maybe
then-
that's a visual, it's books, it's the,
Yeah.
whatever that ladder looks like.
Right. And maybe it's incremental and maybe it's leaps. Hopefully leaps.
There you go.
How do you think we should we discuss this with is the bookmobile a part of this discussion, knowing that like, that's our space on wheels right now? Does it become like that's our collection, right?
Right.
That's our access to a collection. So depending on where it is, and then like accessibility to wherever we pick this space, like,
Yeah.
So is
Like,
that
are
one of the
there-
requirements for physical space is where we could park the bookmobile?
I mean,
I
ideally.
think that would be essential,
there you go.
Because
yeah.
then you could build even synergy, pick up your books, have
Yeah.
a
Right, then it-
program,
mhm.
you, yeah.
Yeah, and just
work towards a weekend, like a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
conceptually tie the two together in people's minds. Like that
Yep.
building's not just a building, it is connected to the library in some way, even if we're not calling it that, you know?
Um,
So,
I mean, I'm just like going back to like core values too, like when we're thinking about this, like space, like being accessible to the people who live here, and ensuring like equal access and inclusivity.
mhm.
Do you mean in terms of like the physical space itself?
Well, yeah, I'm just like, you don't want to like isolate any portion of Cottage Grove.
Hopefully they would all be ADA.
I'm
Already.
assuming, yes.
Right.
Just like that if a space became available, I don't know, in an island over there,
Yeah.
like is it like,
That wouldn't be optimal. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, commercial space, if that's what we're really looking for, is confined to certain regions of the village right now, and
Where, do we have our core values published anywhere yet, or?
they're actually on our webpage, if you scroll past the timeline.
Is there? Refocus, core values.
Yeah.
Hey, I can read.
Um, And obviously, I think we're hitting our mission and vision with the work that we're doing through this. Other, like, I think we have like our goals kind of sketched out for what we want to do and like bring to the next meeting then. So realtor,
Yeah.
taking a look at the minimum space requirements, coming back with SCLS, and then maybe we can start, would you say like next step then, like bringing all this information together and then like working on like some tangible objectives?
Is there anything we need ready for budget season from this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess assuming that I'm still gonna be on the library board, budget would go in, so with the library board, it's gonna have to approve their budget at the September meeting,
Okay.
for submission in October. Which also actually include, so, actually by the end of May, the library board needs to submit capital requests. I don't know if this is a capital request, because this is all kind of operational.
Right. What would, I mean, what would be considered a capital request?
So I mean, our capital
outside of
request
building?
last year was the story walk, because it's like a,
Okay.
thing.
Permanent, yeah.
And the other capital request is the master plan.
Yeah.
And I guess feedback from this committee, do you want me to put that back in as like, and so it gets re-reviewed and the capital priorities process? So, okay, the
I'm
capital
sorry, I'm
priority.
confused.
So, all departments submit capital requests.
Yeah.
They go through a prioritization process where they get ranked A through F.
Mhm.
So yes.
Oh, I
So
see
we-
what you're saying.
Guess
Yes.
what letter we got a lot of?
I think we know. You're saying, do we
I see
put
what
it-
you're
do we
saying
put
now.
it back
So
in
when do we
there?
put it back in? Because, so, it is this is a 10-year plan. It should
Yeah.
be a lot longer, in my opinion, but it's a 10-year plan. So, last year, 2023 to 2032, whatever, 10 years,
Mhm.
now you're adding on like basically year 11 from last year. Like you like revisit all of the
Yeah.
capital projects and re-rank them. Should that just be a standard? We're gonna put this in every year,
Yes,
keep pushing it out.
yes. I think so.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that way,
It's not gonna disappear.
right.
Yep.
And we paid a lot of money for it.
Well, a lot of
You-
editing time into that document
yes.
at 11 at night, passing it back and forth in each other's mailboxes.
Yeah. Keep it alive.
Okay, but is there a capital request then, like to Stefan's point, that needs to be put in by the end of May? Or that we want to take back to at least the library board that can then also discuss this at the May meeting. But with the work, with our goals, just kind of taking a look at like, is there a capital funding that needs to come out of it?
Do we need to ask for funding for rent for a space?
Is that capital?
I don't know.
That's what I was gonna ask. It seems like it would be, but
Oh, really?
I don't
I thought
know.
it was operation.
I mean,
We're,
I thought it'd be
I'm out of my depth
operational.
here.
it's
but,
not something physically we own, but
That's a good,
it's,
I guess that's true. Yeah,
but
so
we
maybe
will
not.
need to own tables and furniture and stuff on the inside of that, so that would be the,
Mm.
I mean, if we have rooms per se, or at least partitioned areas, we need to, by partitions, we need to have some sort of desk, we need to have some sort of security system. Sorry.
So,
Don't be sorry.
I don't know. I don't know how to pull that together without, like, or is this just delay interim space by a year?
Yep.
And can we put in for a capital request when we don't have a space yet? Because I could put together work with Tracy and get some amazing things, like a list of what she could do with like programming and stuff, like supplies.
Right.
But are we putting the cart
Like,
before the horse, are you saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would they feel like
Right, but how do you
how do you
go about
not,
renting
though?
a space if you don't have
And
the
it's
funding?
empty.
And then
know.
I don't
It's
know.
just-
I don't know how this works. So
I don't
maybe I
either.
need to have a larger conversation.
Yeah,
So
mean,
I
too.
think it's a line item budget of rent, staffing, so space, staffing, and things. So we need to be able to say, you know, the dance studio that's going to be empty because they're building one
Mhm.
across the street, right? So now that's rentable space. How much is that? And if we use that space, how much for the next 5 years are we asking for? And then to fill that space, one-time cost would be that list that you're going to put together of a table and 4 chairs cost $500 or whatever. Oh, jeez.
If we're going to the Goodwill.
Isn't that sweet? There's a southern term that I think just came out. Oh, bless your heart.
Although South Central has like a warehouse of things too, and you can get, I think, and so does
Nice.
UW. You can go
Yeah,
to
well,
swap building.
True.
Yeah.
Get lots of weird stuff and desk chairs.
Weird stuff.
Oh,
They're, like,
lab
covered
tables
in,
are
like,
awesome.
All our
No.
space with weird stuff.
Radiation, but it's
Yeah.
fine.
Well, can't we come to the Clem Nelson lab and just clear
Yeah.
that out, and then we can ask for new funding?
I wouldn't take that out of the lab.
I haven't seen your lab space, maybe I'll have
It's
to.
actually very nice. I actually have a lot of space. Okay.
But should we ask for those things? Do you want me to email Tracy and see if she's got some time and I can come up with a big list of, I used to do this with New England libraries. I was consulting and did like space mostly for children.
Yeah, I guess that would be good information to have anyway, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, if we can find a realtor who can find a space and we know how much it costs, like, well, what are you gonna put in it? And if you had that information, that just puts us one step further.
Right,
Yeah.
and if it's not for the capital, then it can be for like, here's our wish list for
Yeah.
whoever, so.
Okay.
I say ask for everything.
Okay.
They can
Wow.
then say no.
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
or, like,
Well,
in a
and
very
I
mean
will
way,
say,
they'll
sitting in
cry.
the room last year when they looked at our request and they called us crazy, it wasn't that direct, but it was like, oh, they knew better than to put this forward. They knew we'd have to say no. It's like, come on.
Well, 2 years ago, we didn't have any direction from anyone.
Yeah.
And so that was a list of everything. Last year, I thought we were pretty much on par with what it should have been.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was still,
It was still, I
Terrible.
still got the feeling from one trustee that we were in the wrong for even asking that.
Yeah,
Rather than stating what our needs were as a board
It's
member.
been-
I was pretty offended by that type of response.
I would say it's
That
been
wasn't
pretty
in my
terrible,
mind. Yeah.
so.
But I think we need to put forth so if our goal is to have library programming space in 2025, this is what we need. And then do they support that by providing the funding and the direction to say, yes, get it done? I think we need to make that ask,
Mhm.
so.
Well put.
I emailed myself, so.
All right.
I'll do this.
I mean, that gives us information we need to have anyway.
Yeah.
The library board, I mean, Stefan, maybe you and I can work on capital requests then,
Yep.
and bring that back to the library board, when we meet in May, because that needs to go to Cameron by like the 30th,
Okay.
so.
And
Cause
okay,
yeah,
so-
furnishings are capital.
Yeah, they are, but that's why I was wondering though.
Well, their
can we-
furnishings are capital in a new construction budget. Are they capital in,
I've
like, if you
never-
were like, oh, I gotta replace a table? Yeah,
I think so.
okay.
I don't know.
So
I
the
haven't
new
done a
police
budget in a
station
long
is a
time.
capital request. The space they rented for the police station, because they didn't own that, right, was them asking for rent, was that a capital request? Yeah,
Okay. Really, so space furnishings, staffing is an operational request, that's in the fall.
okay.
Yeah,
So
Good.
space and furnishings, okay.
okay.
Well, it's 7:06.
We made good time.
All right, anything
said
else
a
you wanna
lot.
talk about?
No?
Okay.
Very good. Thank you for your time and attention on this, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Seconded. Or thirded.
Someone needs to did you someone motion?
No, I'm just
Oh.
thanking you for your,
I move that we adjourn.
All right,
I second.
motion by Stefan, second by Lucas. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.